What is up, everybody? Welcome to DFS by the Numbers. These are my full card breakdown and predictions for UFC Vegas 61. We have Mackenzie Dern going against Xiaonan.
I need all the wins, yeah. Harder than all that is. You better move, you might get knocked out. Knocked out. You better move, you might get knocked out. Knocked out. You better move, you might get knocked out. Knocked out.
And we're back after a week off, breaking down UFC Vegas 61. It is a 13-fight card, and the name value probably isn't here for this card, but I do think stylistically a lot of these fights are going to play out pretty fun, I'd say. And as always, like, we have a UFC card this week, no complaints. It's better than no UFC card. We had no UFC card last week, and unfortunately, we have no UFC card next week as well. So the plan's going to be to sit down, watch these fights, enjoy them, hopefully go into the next week off with a winning week. Was able to have a winning week 2 weeks ago. And the worst possible feeling is going into a week off with a losing week. So hopefully make some money, enjoy the fights. It should be a good time as always. Before we get started, if you guys can please leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you have not already. The goal is to reach 20,000 subs by the end of the year. We have a long way to go, but if you do enjoy the content, be sure to hit the subscribe button. And as always, the likes do go a long way as well. I'm going to have live streams throughout the week, one on Friday for the final thoughts after the weigh-ins, and then one on Saturday for best bet, giving my best bet for each and every fight on the entire card. I do have 2 bets already, 2 pretty big bets that I like this week, and I'm going to start unloading on some other bets once these props do come out. But I think it's a solid card from a betting perspective. A couple sketchy fights here and there, but we'll talk about them. But I say we get right into it, and we will start with the first fight of the night. And we are kicking the card off with an absolute banger. We have Randy Costa going against Guido Canetti. We have Randy Costa, 28 years old, 5'9", with a 73-inch reach, 6-3, and 2-3 in his last 5 fights. Guido Canetti, 42 years old, 5'6", with a 68-inch reach, 9-6, and 2-3 in his last 5 fights. We'll take a look at the odds like we always do, and we see that Randy Costa is one of the biggest favorites on the card. He opened up minus 260s, currently minus 290, and Guido opened up plus 220, and he's currently plus 245. So, tail of the tape right off the bat, Costa is going to be 14 years younger. Guido Canetti, he is 42 years old and 42 years old at bantamweight. And I know he's able to get a win in his last fight against Chris Moutinho, but that's Chris Moutinho. We see Randy Costa as a really big favorite here, and probably for a reason, but I'll tell you right now, I'm not laying minus 300 on Randy Costa because once he reaches the second round, he just has nothing left. He's 0-3 in fights that have went over 1/2 of a round. I'll repeat that. He's 0-3 in fights that have went over 2 minutes and 30 seconds of the first round. He's 6-0 in fights that have went under a half of a round, which is 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So, if this fight gets extended in any type of way, we could see Randy Costa kind of fall off a cliff. So, but he's so much younger. He's 14 years younger. He's much bigger, going to have a height and reach advantage. He's super dangerous, super powerful. Guido Canetti's been finished in 5 of his 6 losses. Randy Costa should go out here and starch Guido Canetti in the first round. But if this gets extended, it's going to get interesting. And another reason it's interesting is because Guido Canetti, when he is winning fights, it's early a lot of times. I think 10 of his 15 fights have ended in the first round himself. So this is going to be a fun fight. It's going to be a car crash. Give me the younger guy, Randy Costa, to get the first round knockout here against Guido Canetti. All right, next we have Julio Stoliarenko going against Chelsea Chandler. Chelsea Chandler, 28 years old, 5'8", with a 69-inch reach, 4-1. And 4-1 in their only 5 fights. Stoliarenko, 29 years old, 5'7", with a 69-inch reach, 10-6, and 3-2 in her last 5 fights. We'll take a look at the odds here. We see that Stoliarenko opened up as a dog, plus 130. She's currently minus 115. Chelsea Chandler opened up minus 150. She is currently minus 105. So yeah, this is another fight that I actually think is going to be fun. Kind of lower level fight here. It's going to be a catchweight at 140 pounds, which is going to be good for both fighters, I think. Stoliarenko has struggled on the scales before at 135, and Chelsea Chandler has fought at 145. So I think the catchweight is going to kind of benefit both fighters here. But we have 2, I want to say, kind of similar fighters. Chelsea Chandler, she's a grappler with a ton of power on the feet. Stoliarenko, she's just a grappler. That's all she is. 10 wins, 9 of them by submission. I think 9 of them by armbar as well. So it's safe to say if Stoliarenko wins this fight, it's going to be by submission, and it's probably going to be by armbar. I think in terms of the striking, it's going to be Chelsea Chandler here, who's going to be the better striker just because Stoliarenko blocks punches with her face. I'm curious to see what her striking defense. Yeah, 44% striking defense for Stoliarenko. She is tough though, but going and watching Chelsea Chandler, although she has not fought the best competition in the world, it was kind of crazy to see somebody just knock fighters down left and right. She had to have had like four or five knockdowns in the fights that I watched. Like there was one fight where she knocked this girl down twice. So she has a ton of power in her hands, and if she connects on Stoliarenko, she can definitely put her down. The problem I have with Chelsea Chandler is every one of her fights pretty much, they hit the mat one way or another, whether it's Chandler taking her opponent down, whether it's Chandler knocking her opponent down. Her fights always seem to end up on the mat, and if that's the case here, Stoliarenko is going to have a ton of opportunities. And I also like how Stoliarenko looked in her last fight against Jessica Rose Clark. She went out there, she was super aggressive as always, but she went and got a takedown. She looked good doing it, and once she got on top, it was like 10 seconds later or less, she was able to get the armbar, hurt Jessica Rose Clark back. I think she might have dislocated her arm or something. It was nasty. Stoliarenko's good on the mat, and I think the fight is going to take place on the mat at some point in this fight, so Stoliarenko by sub, I think, is definitely a possibility. But on the feet, Chelsea Chandler is going to have a big opportunity to knock out or very, very well hurt Stoliarenko. So I'm going to go the Stoliarenko side here. This is borderline like a 1-800-gambler fight, but it's a fun fight. It's a fun fight where you have two solid grapplers, Stoliarenko being the better grappler here, and you have two fighters that are down to stand and bang on the feet. Chandler with the power. It's a close fight. The line indicates that, but give me Stoliarenko to get a sub at some point in this fight. Should be a very fun fight, actually. All right. Next, we have Maxim Grishin going against Philipe Lins. We have Grishin, who is 38 years old, 6'3", with a 76-inch reach, 32-9-2, and 32-9-2, and 2-2-1. There we go. In his last 5 fights, Philipe Lins, 37 years old, 6'2", with a 78-inch reach, 15-5, and 3-2. In his last 5 fights, we'll take a look at the odds. Grishin opened up -110, currently -180. Philipe Lins opened up +110. He is currently +155 here. And Philipe Lins was a guy that I was very well excited about coming into the UFC. I went and watched him in PFL, and he looked like a killer. I mean, he looked very, very good. Obviously, he won the $1 million on PFL, and that's kind of what he's known for there. He looked good. He had fast hands. He had a ton of power, great finishing ability. And then he gets to the UFC, and he just looks like a completely different fighter. He looks like a complete shell of himself. Just did nothing against Andrei Arlovski, like just nothing that entire fight. And then after that, he's getting knocked out by Tanner Boser. And then his very last fight, he cuts down to light heavyweight for the first time in a while. And he looked good physically, but as far as how the fight went, just kind of a very sloppy fight where Prachnio was gassed out. Like it was like 4 minutes left in the second round, 3 minutes and 30 seconds left in the second round. Philipe Lins should have finished Marcin Prachnio, who gets finished by everybody when he loses, right? And Philipe Lins had him dead in the water with like I said, 4 minutes left in the second round, but Lins started to tire out. It's just a sloppy, messy, greasy fight. I actually think, Maxim Grishin's a good fighter. He's 38 years old, so he is getting up there, but Lins is not much younger at only 37. Grishin has, he's good everywhere. He's really good striking, a lot of power. He dropped Dustin Jacoby twice in his fight with Dustin Jacoby, which, by the way, was a super, super close fight, which is very impressive. Like, on the feet, it's going to be Maxim Grishin who's going to be the minute winner on the feet by a mile here. And I think Maxim Grishin, honestly, probably has more power. Like, Grishin has a ton of power in his hands, whereas Lins, the power is not translating. Like, if you can't knock out Marcin Prachnio, especially when he's gassed out, there's some problems for sure. So I like Grishin in terms of the striking. About the victory for Lins, I guess would be to grapple here. He's a black belt in BJJ, which I always found interesting because he never uses it, at least not lately. But he is a black belt. He is training at American Top Team. And I did hear an interview where he said he's going to use that wrestling and grappling against Maxim Grishin, which, if he does, is he going to, submit Grishin in the first round? I'm not so sure. Like, Grishin has fought, very good wrestlers and very good grapplers in his career before that. So, I think it's a good matchup for Grishin here. Like, even if Philipe Lins does have success in the first, is he going to go out there and wrestle and take Grishin down consistently for 15 minutes? No, I just don't think he has the cardio to do that. So, I think Grishin has him covered here. Maybe Lins has some success early, but after that first round, Grishin's going to have the clear cardio advantage here. So, I like Grishin here. I like him quite a bit. As far as decision or knock, like I could see a knockout here. Like Lentz has been knocked out a ton. He's been knocked out 4 times. And like I said, Grishin hits very, very hard. I'm going to say Grishin does get that knock. I'm going to say it's in the 3rd round, though. I'm going to say he kind of wears on Philipe and eventually does get him out of there. I'll say 3rd round knockout for Maxim Grishin. All right, next we have Brendan Allen going against Krzysztof Jotko. We have Jotko, who is 33 years old, 6'1", with a 77-inch reach, 24-5 and 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Brendan Allen, 26 years old, 6'2", with a 75-inch reach, 19-5 and 4-1 in his last 5 fights. This is one of the closest lined fights on the entire card outside of the Stoliarenko fight. We have Jotko, who opened up as a plus 105 dog, is currently minus 131. We have Brendan Allen, who opened up as a minus 125 favorite. He is currently plus 111. And I find this fight very interesting because we have somebody in Krzysztof Jotko who has some of the best fight IQ in the UFC. Like, this guy is someone who knows how to win fights, and he may not be the most exciting fighter in the world. He's actually probably the most boring fighter on the roster, top 3 boring fighters on the roster, but he knows how to win. His fight IQ is just off the charts, and then you have somebody in Brendan Allen who's the complete opposite. He has some of the worst fight IQ you'll ever see in your life. He is a phenomenal grappler, BJJ black belt, that he just refuses to nowadays use it. He's turned into a striker, fell in love with his striking, and that's fine. I think his striking's improved. He's looked better, but against Chris Curtis, Sean Strickland, you got to take those guys down. You're not going to outstrike guys like that. As far as this fight goes, on the feet, I think it's going to be Allen that obviously has more power, but Allen is he's a walking punching bag. His striking defense is terrible. His striking defense is sitting at 44%. That's the same striking defense as Stoliarenko, who's also a walking punching bag. Krzysztof Jotko, very good striking defense, very good at not getting hit, very good at staying out of danger as well. Like I said, Jotko makes the fight super boring, which, he's winning these super boring fights, and I think that's what he's going to do here on the feet. I think Jotko's going to just, whenever he throws, it's probably going to land. Brendan Allen probably throws more volume. I think he's going to do a lot of missing, though. And then on top of that, is Brendan Allen going to grapple? No, he's not. Should he? Yeah, he should, but he's not going to. And if he did, Jotko has a very good takedown defense of 83%. We saw him stuff a ton of takedowns, especially early on against Misha Serkinov. Serkinov was able to eventually get him down. But I think if Brendan Allen does try to go for takedowns, they will be stuffed. And I think if Jotko wants to, I think Jotko can go for takedowns here. And I think that would actually be very smart because Brendan Allen cannot stuff a takedown at all. Brendan Allen's takedown defense is sitting at 50%. We saw in Allen's last fight against Jacob Malkoun, of course, that is Jacob Malkoun, very good wrestler, grappler. Malkoun was able to take him down 7 times. We saw Kyle Dawkins able to take him down 3 times. And then as far as Krzysztof Jotko, we saw him go out there and take down Gerald Mearshart 4 times in his last fight. And Jotko is a black belt in BJJ as well. So I think Jotko on the feet is going to have the better striking defense here. And I think Jotko can get this fight down to the mat, win minutes, push Allen against the cage. He just does what it takes to win. So I'm probably one of the biggest Jotko haters out there, and I don't think there's one person out there that's a Jotko fan, because how could you could be? His fights are horrible, but I think he is, has what it takes absolutely to win this fight. So give me Jotko to win, and when Jotko does win, it is by decision. I think he has maybe 1 finish in the UFC. One finish in the UFC, and he's been in the UFC for almost 10 years, so... Jotko by decision. I think his fight IQ is off the charts, and that fight IQ is going to win in the fight here. All right, next we have kind of a banger here. We have Joaquim Silva going against Jesse Ronson. We have Silva, who is 33 years old, 5'8", with a 69-inch reach, 11-3 and 2-3 in his last 5 fights. Jesse Ronson, 36 years old, 5'10", with a 70.5-inch reach, 21-11 and 2-3 in his last 5 fights. We'll take a look at the odds here. We see that Silva opened up minus 170, currently minus 140. Jesse Ronson opened up plus 145, currently plus 120 here. And this is a kind of a tough fight to call. We have Joaquim Silva, nicknamed Neto BJJ, which is funny because he has no submissions in the UFC. His actual last submission came in 2014. His ground game is very good. Very good. He just doesn't use it in the UFC, and he hasn't in almost 10 years at this point. So, although his nickname is Neto BJJ, don't expect him to use that BJJ here against Jesse Ronson, which against Ronson you absolutely should. We saw it, Rafa Garcia did to Jesse Ronson on the mat in his last fight. He was able to run through him and submit Jesse Ronson. Rafa Garcia submitted Jesse Ronson. If Rafa Garcia can do it, Joaquim Silva absolutely can do it as well. It's just Joaquim Silva does not grapple at all in the UFC. It just doesn't happen. In Silva's entire career in the UFC, he's got one takedown. One. And he was not able to hold his opponent down. I think it was against Jared Gordon, and he only was able to get like a couple seconds of control time off of that takedown. So, although I think Silva should absolutely grapple and use that BJJ, it's not something you can count on him to do. What you can count on Silva to do is go in there like a madman and throw down. He's going to point to the ground and say, let's stand and bang. And that is the type of fight that Jesse Ronson can absolutely win. Jesse Ronson hits very hard. Both these guys do, actually. But I really question the durability of Joaquim Silva. He took a big layoff. So his last fight was against Hackpress. 2 fights ago was against Hackpress. That was 3 years ago. And then he took like a 2-year layoff and then fought Ricky Glenn. And Ricky Glenn finished him in like a minute, which is not a good look because Ricky Glenn is not known as somebody who goes out there and finishes guys in a minute. Jesse Ronson, I think, hits much, much harder than Rick Glenn. So, although I think stylistically Silva has all the tools to win this fight, and that's why he's the favorite, people maybe think that he's going to grapple Jesse Ronson. He's not going to do that. So, it's Jesse Ronson for me as a dog. I think Jesse Ronson knocks out Joaquim Silva. One thing that worries me, and the reason I'm not betting Jesse Ronson here, is because he came in against Nicholas Dalby. He looked phenomenal. He looked career best. He hurt Dalby, he dropped him, and then he submitted him. The next fight against Rafa Garcia was a little bit of a layoff, about a year and a half. And the reason there was a layoff because he did test positive for PEDs. So he got off the juice and he looked atrocious against Rafa Garcia. That is the one reason why I'm not betting on this fight, and it's a tough fight to bet and call because Jesse Ronson just looked like a completely different fighter from the Dalby fight to that Garcia fight. And obviously that PED suspension is sketchy as well. So I'm going to say Jesse Ronson knocks out Silva and does it in the very first round. But these guys are going to throw down. It's going to be fun. I think somebody's getting knocked out. And probably one of the better fights on the card, honestly. So I'm going to take Jesse Ronson. First round knockout. This should be an absolute banger for as long as it lasts. All right, next we have Tabatha Ricci going against Jessica Penne. We have Ricci, who is 27 years old, 5'1", with a 62-inch reach, 7-1, 4-1 in her last 5 fights. Jessica Penne, 39 years old, 5'5", with a 67-inch reach, 14-6, and 2-3 in her last 5 fights. We'll take a look at the odds here. Tabatha Ricci, pretty big favorite. Open at -250. She's currently -205. Jessica Penne open at +210. She is currently +175. And this is a fight where I think it's a good fight for Tabatha Ricci here. For a couple reasons. We see that Jessica Penne is 39 years old, about to be 40, did not look good in her last matchup against Emily Ducote, but this is kind of a complete different matchup. Ducote is a much better striker than Tabatha Ricci. Ricci's striking is not great, and Ricci is going to be at a reach disadvantage here of about 5 inches. Ricci's going to be the much smaller fighter, but what I do like about Tabatha Ricci is going to be the wrestling, the judo. She's very, very strong, and she is able to get the fight down to the mat. And it's kind of weird, like Jessica Penne, on paper, she does not have the best takedown defense in the world in terms of the takedown defense percentage. She's sitting at about 40%, but nobody's really trying to take her down. Lupi tried to take her down a good amount of times. Karolina Kovacevic took her down, but outside of that, like Michelle Watterson, I was back in Invicta. Nobody in the UFC is really trying to take her down outside of that Lupi fight, really. So, although it's 40%, nobody's really trying to take her down as much as I really like to see. So, but, Tabatha Ricci, I think her wrestling is definitely good enough to get this fight down to the mat. And when it is on the mat, Ricci's pretty solid on top. Jessica Penne is a black belt in BJJ, but I do think it's going to be Tabatha Ricci that is going to be the one getting the top control there. I think it's kind of a tough matchup for Jessica Penne here, unless Penne can maybe go for takedowns herself. Tabatha Ricci is 0 for 1 in terms of defending takedowns, but that was against Manon Fiorot, up a weight class on short notice, so don't want to look into that too much. I think it's going to be Tabatha Ricci more likely to get on top here, win minutes on top. I think if it's on the feet, it's going to be very ugly with not a ton going on. Both are not the best strikers in the world, but it's going to be Tabatha Ricci being the one getting on top, winning minutes on top, and winning a decision here, but not a fight I am interested in betting, though, but I will pick Tabatha Ricci. I'll take Tabatha Ricci to grind out a decision here. All right, next we have the 1-800 Gambler fight of the week, we have Ilir Latifi going against Aleksei Oleinik. We have Latifi, 39 years old, 5'10", with a 75-inch reach, 15-8 and 2-3 in his last 5 fights. Aleksei Oleinik, 45 years old, 6'2", with an 80-inch reach, 16-1 and 2-3 in his last 5 fights. This is going to be Aleksei Oleinik's 78th fight. The dude's been fighting since like 1996, 1997. 45 years old, oldest fighter on the card. One of the oldest fighters on the roster, if not probably the oldest now at this point, right? What a mess of a fight. We have 2 guys who are more than past their prime, and Aleksei Oleinik was able to go out there and get a nice win in his last fight against Jared Vanderaa. Typical Aleksei Oleinik fight, and I enjoy watching Aleksei Oleinik fights. You never know what you're going to expect. They're like always fun and exciting. Anything can happen in an Oleinik fight, and I think this one's going to be weird and exciting as well. And I can just see this playing out in so many different ways here. This line, I mean, Ilir Latifi opened up minus 200. He's currently minus 183. Oleinik opened up plus 170. He's currently plus 158. And I don't necessarily agree with that. Ilir Latifi looks horrible at heavyweight. Just looks terrible. In his last 30 minutes of fight time, the dude's landed 15 strikes. 15 strikes in the last 30 minutes. So, although I think, he should be able to knock out Aleksei Oleinik, how is he going to knock out Oleinik if he doesn't throw anything? Like, he does nothing on the feet. If he gets a takedown, he does nothing on the mat. Against Tanner Boser, he took him down, just laid on him, did nothing. So, how is Ilir Latifi going to win this fight if he's going to do nothing? And I guess, is he going to take down Aleksei Oleinik? I think he's going to, and if he does that, that's what Oleinik wants, right? Oleinik wants the fight to be on the mat, whether he's, pulling guard, whether he's getting the takedown himself. I don't think Oleinik's going to be able to get a takedown here against Latifi. Latifi's takedown defense is elite, but I can see Oleinik pulling guard. I can see Latifi taking this down to the mat, and if Latifi does take this down to the mat, it's going to be in Oleinik's world. So this line kind of shocks me, to be honest. I know Oleinik's 100 years old, but Latifi's not much younger, and Latifi's looked awful, just terrible. His last couple fights, his fights are hard to watch. I think Oleinik is not the better striker, but I think he will win minutes on the feet just because he does stuff. He goes out there. It's not the most it's actually the worst technical striking you'll probably ever see, but he's active with it. He throws with power. Whereas Ilir Latifi just looks at you on the feet, especially nowadays. He lands hard, but he doesn't throw anything. And then we could talk about Oleinik's cardio. Oleinik's cardio is horrible, but so is Ilir Latifi's. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like stylistically, this is a very winnable fight for old man Oleinik here because he's going to get the fight he wants. Whether it's on the feet, he should be the minute winner there. And if it hits the mat, he wants that. He wants to be on his back. He's okay with being on his back. He's had much bigger guys on top of him than Ilir Latifi, who's a light heavyweight who does not want to cut weight anymore. So give me old man Oleinik one last ride, 45 years old. I think he said he wants to fight till he's 50, something like that. We'll see. But yeah, Oleinik, I think he gets this one done. But it's a 1-800-GAMBLER fight if I've ever seen one. Pretty much all Oleinik fights are 1-800-GAMBLER fights, but this one especially. So, Oleinik first round submission should be hilarious. All right, next we have probably my favorite fight on the card. Sure, everybody's looking forward to this one. We have Mike Davis going against Viacheslav Borshchev. We have Davis, who is 29 years old, 6 foot with a 72.5-inch reach, 9-2, 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Borshchev, 30 years old, 5'11", with a 79-inch reach, 6-2 and 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Let's take a look at these odds here. We have Mike Davis opening up minus 250, currently minus 180. Borshchev opening up plus 210, currently plus 155. So first look, I thought I would be betting Borshchev here as a dog, honestly, because I feel like there's a lot of recency bias baked into this line, right? We saw Mark Diakese go out there and, take down Borshchev at will, control Borshchev for 15 minutes. There's a big difference between Mike Davis and Mark Diakiese. I think Diakiese has much better control on top, whereas Davis, you go and watch his fights, he can get takedowns, but his opponents are popping right back up. He's getting reversed by some lower level guys. So I don't think Mike Davis has the same control as Mark Diakiese. So for that reason, I felt like there might be some value here on Borshchev because I don't see Mike Davis really holding down Borshchev. But then I went and watched pretty much every fight I could of Mike Davis, pretty much every single fight of his career. And what I noticed was in, pretty much every fight outside the UFC especially, like he's going for takedowns and he's getting them. His wrestling's really good. Like I said, his control's not that good, but he can get takedowns no problem. And if he can get takedowns no problem against some of these other guys, against like a Mason Jones, guys like that, I mean, he's gonna have no problem getting takedowns against Borshchev, who has some of the worst takedown defense you'll ever see. Like a gust of wind can knock down and take down Borshchev here. So although I do see Borshchev getting back up, I just think that on the feet it's going to be very close, and I think Mike Davis will be mixing in takedowns here, and I think he can mix in those takedowns to kind of seal off these rounds. So if it's close on the feet, Mike Davis, landing 1, 2, 3 takedowns around, because I think that's 100% on the table. If Mike Davis wants to take this fight down to the mat, he's going to take this fight down to the mat, no question about it. His wrestling is very impressive, and Borshchev's takedown defense is atrocious. So if he wants 3 takedowns around, he can get those 3 takedowns. And I think he can do that and win rounds here. And on top of that, his BJJ is not bad. I think he's I want to say a brown belt. He's a good grappler. A couple submissions on his record. If he's able to take the back of Borshchev, I think that could be a path there as well. But yeah, I thought I'd be leaning with Borshchev here, but after digging into the career of Mike Davis, I think he has all the tools to win this fight. I do think it's going to play out close on the feet, but I think the takedowns are going to be the difference. And I think if Mike Davis comes in here with the right game plan, he will look like a minus 180 favorite. If he goes out there and shoots 10 takedowns, he's probably getting 9 of them because Borshchev's takedown defense is so bad. And he's going to win the fight. He's going to look like a big favorite here. So as long as Mike Davis fights smart, he's going to win this fight. I will say he does fight smart. I say he does mix in the takedowns. And I'm going to say he does win a decision here. Give me Mike Davis to win this fight by decision. All right, next we have John Castaneda going against Daniel Santos. We have Castaneda, 30 years old, 5'6", with a 69-inch reach, 19-5, and 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Daniel Santos, 27 years old, 5'7", with a 67-inch reach, 9-2, and 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Take a look at the odds here. Daniel Santos is a dog. He opened up plus 130, currently plus 160. John Castaneda opened up minus 150, currently minus 185. So Daniel Santos made his debut against Julio Arce, and he was getting some mad respect on the money line and against Arce there. It was weird. Like Arce, he's like minus 170, minus 180 against Daniel Santos, which really didn't make a ton of sense, especially looking at it now. But it's kind of the same line here against John Castaneda, which is weird because this is a pretty big step down from Julio Arce here. And I think people are very low on Daniel Santos because he did make his debut against Julio Arce. He did not have the best performance in the world. He did show some good things here and there, but I think we did not see the best version of Daniel Santos because you compare his fight to Arce to the fights prior to that. Like he looks really good. A lot of spinning attacks, very flashy striker. I love the forward aggression. I love the chin. He's somebody that relies on that chin as well. A lot of good things from Santos. Like you go and watch his fights, and I saw at least 3 spinning back kicks to the body, putting his opponents down. He's a dangerous fighter. So I think we did not see the best version of Daniel Santos in his UFC debut, and I think the line is indicating that. Oh, by the way, this is a catchweight fight for some reason. I'm not sure, was not able to find out who wanted the catchweight or why it's a catchweight, but this is a catchweight at 140 pounds. So somebody probably was struggling to make the weight, and it's now a catchweight. Would like to know kind of which side it was, but maybe we'll find out throughout the week. But yeah, John Castaneda is a guy that, these guys are pretty similar. John Castaneda looked really good in his last fight against Miles Johns, was able to pressure Johns, eventually finish him in that fight. Looked pretty good against Eddie Wineland as well. But I went back and watched that Eddie Wineland fight, and it was kind of concerning how, Castaneda was getting backed up against Eddie Wineland. Eddie Wineland was pressuring, having success. Like Eddie Wineland was winning that fight early on, and then Castaneda landed a big shot and knocked out the very chinny old Eddie Wineland there. I feel like Daniel Santos is going to pressure nonstop. That's all he does. It's nonstop pressure, nonstop volume. And although he didn't land a ton in the Arce fight, I think there's a big difference between Arce and Castaneda. So I see this as a very close fight here. I don't see this fight hitting the mat. If it does, it's probably Castaneda going for takedowns. Castaneda does have a wrestling background, but I don't see him using it here. I like the pressure of Santos. I like the volume of Santos. Should be a fun fight with a ton of output on either side. But give me a Santos to get it done. Kind of shock the world here. I know Castaneda is a very popular parlay piece this week, but I think we're going to see a much better version of Daniel Santos this time out. And I'm going to say he wins this fight by decision here. So Daniel Santos to win by decision. All right, next we have Sodiq Yusuff going against Don Shameless Shainis. We have Sodiq Yusuff, who is 29 years old, 5'9" with a 71-inch reach, 12-2 and 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Don Shainis, 31 years old, 5'6" with a 66.5-inch reach, 13-3 and 5-0 in his last 5 fights. We'll take a look at the odds here, and Sodiq Yusuff is the biggest favorite on the card by a mile. Opened up minus 550, currently minus 1,100. Don Shainis opened up plus 420. He is currently plus 750. The line is where it's at just because Sodiq Yusuff is the more skilled fighter by a mile here, but I don't think Don Shainis is a bum by any means. Don Shainis shows a lot of good things, shows some good wrestling, shows some good toughness as well, but he's just going to be super outmatched here against Sodiq Yusuff. Like, on the feet, it's night and day. Yusuff is going to have the advantage by a mile. It's not even close. For Don Shainis to have success here, he's going to have to get it down to the mat, which could be possible. I think Don Shainis absolutely can mix in takedowns here and there, but he's going to be so undersized. Yusuff is going to be the much bigger fighter here by a mile, and I do think this fight does primarily play out on the feet. And when it's on the feet, like it's Sodiq Yusuff, and I think Sodiq Yusuff is going to have an absolute field day on the feet. I think the skill discrepancy on the feet is that wide. So minus 1,100. I mean, you can't do much with that. But Sodiq Yusuff should win the fight. The odds are indicating that he should win the fight. Just hard to see a path to victory for Don Shainis outside of him, wrestling Yusuff for 3 rounds. So give me Sodiq Yusuff to win. Yusuff to win by decision here. Potential late finish, I guess. But Yusuff's not much of a finisher. I think 1 finish or 2 finishes in the UFC. 50% finish rate overall. And Don Shainis is a tough guy. I'll say Yusuff by decision, but I'm not betting this fight. All right, 3 fights left. We have Barcelos going against Trevin Jones here. We have Barcelos, 35 years old, 5'7", with a 67-inch reach, 13-3 and 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Trevin Jones, 32 years old, 5'7", with a 70-inch reach, 13-8 and 3-2 in his last 5 fights. All right, we have Barcelos opening at minus 280, currently minus 235, and Trevin Jones opening at plus 240, currently plus 200, and it's Barcelos was a guy that a lot of people, including me, was all over this guy. I thought he could very well be in the top 15 at any point, fight in the top 15, go into the top 10, maybe top 5. That's how highly I thought of Barcelos. But now he's on a 2-fight skid, losing to Timur Valiev and then losing to Victor Henry. Just want to bring up the line in that Victor Henry fight. And Barcelos was a minus 450 favorite against Victor Henry. Against Timur Valiev, he was minus 210, minus 215. So he was pretty big favorites against both those guys. And now he's only like minus 220, minus 230 against Trevin Jones here. So I think people are very low on Barcelos. But the thing with Victor Henry is Victor Henry went out there and just outworked him. He threw a ton of volume. I'll tell you how much volume Victor Henry did throw in that fight and did land, because it was a ton. Victor Henry, in that fight, he landed 181 significant strikes. He attempted 397 strikes. 397. So Victor Henry outworked Barcelos, right? Timur Valiev slightly outworked Barcelos. I did think that fight could have been a draw easily. Like, Barcelos dropped Valiev hard twice in the second round, was seconds away from finishing the fight. The ref was kind of about to step in saying, move fighter. And then eventually, Barcelos kind of let him off the hook there a little bit, but it could have been a 10-8. Could have been a draw. But regardless, Valiev did outwork him a little bit in that third round, that first round as well. And then Victor Henry just outworked him the entire fight, just throwing a ton of volume. The thing with this fight here is I think Barcelos is better everywhere in every single aspect of MMA. Trevin Jones, he's a highly credentialed black belt, but so is Barcelos. I think Barcelos is like a 3rd degree black belt, something crazy like that. On top of that, Barcelos is going to have the better wrestling. Barcelos has a 92% takedown defense. You can't take this guy down. Trevin Jones, his wrestling's not great at all. He has a 12% takedown accuracy, so I don't see Trevin Jones taking this down to the mat. If this fight hits the mat, it's Barcelos going to be the one getting this fight down to the mat. I do think this fight does primarily play out on the feet, and when it does, it's going to be Barcelos who has the higher volume. Barcelos is landing 5.98 significant strikes per minute, a ton of volume. And then we have Trevin Jones, who doesn't throw anything. Trevin Jones landing about 2.9 significant strikes per minute. So, Barcelos, in terms of the significant strike numbers, about doubling him up here. So, and on top of that, Barcelos is the better striker. He has more tools on the feet, and he should be the minute winner here pretty clear. Both guys have power. Trevin Jones, his path to victory here is probably a knockout. Trevin Jones did knock out Mario Batista. He knocked out Timur Valiev. Maybe he knocks out Barcelos here, but Barcelos has never been knocked out in 19 fights. He's never been dropped in 19 fights as well. I think Barcelos wins this fight everywhere it goes. Unless Barcelos is like completely washed, which I don't think that's the case. I just think he got outworked against Victor Henry. With, like I said, Victor Henry throwing 400 strikes. Trevin Jones is not going to throw anywhere near that at all. I think it should be Barcelos on Barcelos. Making this look pretty easily outside of, Trevin Jones landing a big shot, which it could happen. It's MMA, but give me Barcelos to win this fight, and Barcelos to win this fight by decision, probably a 30-27. All right, co-main event, we have Randy Brown going against Francisco Trinaldo. We have Randy Brown, 32 years old, 6'3", with a 78-inch reach, 15-4 and 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Francisco Trinaldo, 44 years old, 5'9", with a 70-inch reach, 28-8 and 4-1 in his last 5 fights. We'll take a look at the odds. If we see that Randy Brown, he opened up as a minus 230 favorite, currently minus 330. Trinaldo opened up plus 195. He's currently plus 270. So a lot of money coming in on Randy Brown. I guess the biggest thing here, there's a lot of big things in this fight that we need to talk about. The first big thing is the age. Randy Brown, 12 years younger at 32 years old. Trinaldo is 44 years old at welterweight, a guy that typically fought at 155, came up a weight class, and he's going to be undersized here by a lot. Randy Brown's going to have a 6-inch height advantage, and he's going to have an 8-inch reach advantage. And I remember Trinaldo against Dwight Grant. He looked so small in that fight. I think Dwight Grant's like 6'1", 6'2". So Randy Brown's bigger than Dwight Grant. And then it was against Jai Herbert, where he looked really small as well. And I think, again, Jai Herbert's like 6'1", 6'2". So Randy Brown's bigger than both those guys. I think Randy Brown's going to be towering over Francisco Trinaldo. So as far as this fight plays out, I think kind of like the last fight, I think for Trinaldo to win, it's going to have to be a puncher's chance here. Randy Brown, I guess the one thing I don't like about him is potential chin issues. We did see him get knocked out by Vicente Luque, and we did also see him get knocked out by Nico Price, those hammer fists from bottom right. Outside of that, his chin has held up, but we saw Chaos Williams drop him in his last fight. So the chin is kind of like the one thing, but Trinaldo's not really going out there and knocking guys out. He does hit pretty hard, but let's see. I think he has like maybe 1 or 2 knockouts in like the last 5 years. Yeah, so he knocked out Evan Dunham back in 2018, and then knocked out Jai Herbert. And then prior to that, his last knockout win was like back in 2015. So he does have some power, but he's not going out there and starching guys by any means, especially at this weight class. So yeah, I think it's Randy Brown here. I think it's Randy Brown all day. Randy Brown should be the more active fighter on the feet by a mile. I think Randy Brown should have the better cardio here by a mile. Trinaldo, he's 44 years old. I'm shocked that he's still fighting and having success at this level at 44 years old. But this is a big step up in competition from guys like Dwight Grant. Randy Brown's not Dwight Grant. And Danny Roberts. Randy Brown is definitely not Danny Roberts. I think Randy Brown would finish both these guys here. And Trinaldo had a very, very close fight with Dwight Grant, like a fight that could have went either way, right? So, and then on top of that, against Jai Herbert, like Jai Herbert was on his way to winning that fight. He was on his way to winning that fight, and then Trinaldo landed a big shot in that 3rd round. So, yeah, I like Randy Brown here. He's a big favorite, but I think a big favorite for a reason. I'll say he wins by decision. Trinaldo, like 36 fights, never been knocked out. The guy is super tough. I wouldn't be shocked if Randy Brown finished him, but I'll say Randy Brown just outworks him and wins a decision here. Should be a very fun fight. All right, next we have the main event. We have Mackenzie Dern going against Xiaonan. We have Dern, 29 years old, 5'4", with a 63-inch reach, 12-2 and 4-1 in her last 5 fights. Xiaonan, she is 33 years old. She is 5'5", with a 63-inch reach, 15-3 and 3-2 in her last 5 fights. We'll take a look at the odds. Mackenzie Dern opened up -160, currently She opened up -185, actually. She's currently -232. It was Xiaonan that opened up +160. She is currently +197. So this is a striker versus grappler. It doesn't get any more clear than that. I guess the thing with Dern is that I am not the biggest fan of is the takedown accuracy, the wrestling, which is some of the worst offensive wrestling you'll see, right? Like, she has a 9% takedown accuracy in the UFC. She's not able to get fights down to the mat, with those takedowns, but she is able to get fights down to the mat in other ways. She can pull guard, she can take the back standing, so although the wrestling's not there, she is still able to get fights down to the mat one way or another, and I think that's going to happen here. If Mackenzie Dern had wrestling, I think she would be -1,000 in this fight, right? Like -1,000, because Xiaonan's ground game is not good. We saw that against Carla Esparza. Xiaonan made Carla Esparza look like freaking Khamzat Chimaev. It looked like Chimaev versus Reese McKee in that Esparza fight. Like, Esparza just ran through Xiaonan just easily. And if Carla Esparza is getting you out of there, I mean, what is Mackenzie Dern going to do? Mackenzie Dern, the best grappler in the division, super dangerous on the mat. It's going to take one takedown, one back take. If this fight hits the mat, the fight's going to be over. Simple as that. Dern's that much better than Xiaonan on the mat. It's not even close. On the feet, Mackenzie Dern has been making some improvements. She went from a horrible striker to an okay striker, I guess you could say. She goes out there, she's active, she hits hard. The technique's not really there, but she kind of makes it like a chaotic fight on the feet, which is good. But she's going to need to get this fight down to the mat. On the feet, it's Xiaonan all day. But I do think this fight hits the mat at some point in the fight. I think most people are thinking that, considering the line. Am I going to bet Mackenzie Dern at -230 when she cannot wrestle? No, I am not. But I do think this fight hits the mat at some point. She has 5 rounds to do it. And when this fight hits the mat, the fight's over. Once this fight hits the mat, it's over. So for that reason, give me Dern by sub. Dern by submission here. I think it's pretty likely to happen, honestly, unless Xiaonan can keep this on the feet for 5 rounds. If she does, she's probably going to win 50-45. She's that much better of a striker, but I see this fight hitting the mat. So give me Mackenzie Dern to win. I'll say Dern wins by like 2nd round sub. I think she eventually finds her way to the mat, and when she does, it's going to be over pretty quickly there. All right, we did it. Went through 13 fights there. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys have not already, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, going live Friday or Saturday. You can check me out on Twitter, DFS_numbers. Instagram is DFS by the numbers. My DMs are always open for any questions. If you want extra content, be sure to sign up at DFSbythenumbers.com. Ton of content dropping throughout the week, articles, bets, all that good stuff. And yeah, so we're going to have a week off next week. I'm going to get ahead, and I'm going to tape. What's next week? I think UFC Vegas 62, right? I'm going to tape that card and expect a pretty early breakdown for that next card. Going to be getting out some early bets as well. And then we have UFC 280 to look forward to. So lots of great stuff coming up. Lots of great cards to end the year. Looking to finish the year strong from a betting perspective and a picks perspective. And should be a good time. So yeah, guys, leave a like, subscribe, all the good stuff. Best of luck for UFC Vegas 61. See you guys.